Okay, so now I want to read this one to you. Jane and Faye have 36 bagatelles left. If they began with 160 bagatelles, what percent of the original number remains? One of the things I like about Saxon math is the funny names, bagatelles. All right, so we have Jane and Faye have 32 bagatelles left. So 32 bagatelles left. Okay. If they began with 160 bagatelles, so wouldn't 160 bagatelles be their 100%? It would be, wouldn't it? What percent of the original number remains? Okay, so let's go ahead and set this one up with a proportion, and then we'll do the little eggs. Okay, so we're talking about how much remains, and wouldn't remains and being left be the same thing? So the 32 is the amount that remains out of the total they started with, and we're trying to find out what percent, and we're going to put the 100% on the bottom. Okay, so this is proportions, and we've got the part to the whole, the part to the whole. And this is a perfectly great way to work it out. The other way to work it out would be to start with this, multiply both sides by 100 to get the what percent by itself. I'm going to end up doing that anyway, aren't I? So I'm going to multiply this side by 100 and multiply this side by 100, because then that gets my unknown quantity by itself. And all I have to do is a little bit of math. So let's look at it. So look at that. I've got a 32 and a 16 hiding in the 160. I know that if I divide 32 by 16, I get a 2. And if I divide 160 by 16, I get a 10. Ooh, that made things a lot easier. So now the 10 and the 100 can cancel with a 10, and I wind up with only having a 10 times 2 or 20. So 20 is my percent. That is the percent that I am looking for, 20%. Now, let's go ahead and do the diagram for that problem. So here are my eggs. Okay, so 160 was the original number. And here they had bagatelles, 160 bagatelles. And so that's my before number, my 100%. 32 was the number of bagatelles they designated, and they were trying to find out. It was 32 bagatelles left, and their question was what percent remains. Left and remains means the same thing. So this is the number that would be the answer to the problem. And we found out in our last board here that it was 20%. Okay, so we're going to say 32 is 20%. And 128, then, if 20%, this would have to be 80%. Yeah, let's check our work. Is 32 is 20% of 160. Okay, so when I do the math, this is 1/5 and 1/5 of 160. So 160 divided by 5 is going to go 3 for 15, 102. And it works. Okay. Okay, let's look at practice problem B. Caesar's legion had an inventory of 2,400 pairs of thongs. If they normally wear out 30% of their supply by the end of the fiscal year, how many pairs of thongs remain at the end of the fiscal year? That's a lot of marching around on those poor shoes there. Okay, so here we go. Okay, first we're going to discern what we're looking for. So it says Caesar's Legion had an inventory of 2,400 thongs at the beginning of the year. Okay, it doesn't say at the beginning of the year, but that's kind of assumed. If they normally wear out, 30% wears out. Okay, and then they say how many pairs of thongs remain. So we want to know the 70%, don't we? This one right here is the question that we're trying to find out. So we're going to do our math. So when we go to do our little diagrams, the whole goes here of 2,400. And this is the 100%. This is also the before number. And then over here, we've got our cracked egg. And we're going to put 30% is what? And 70% is what? And this is the one they actually want for the answer of the question. So on this one, I would probably just say 30% of 2,400 is what? Okay, so we can do that with our other board. I put both questions down here because I wanted you to see. Isn't this the question that they want from us? They want to know how many of the shoes are still left. So 70% of the shoes are still in operating order at the end of the fiscal year. So let's do this problem instead of that problem so we don't get confused. 70% of is our times sign. 2,400 is our equal sign, and we're trying to figure that out. So now, oh, look how easy this one is. The 100 and the 2 zeros cancel out. So now all we have to do is multiply 24 times 70. Okay, so I'm going to, 4 times 7 is 28. 14, 15, 16, and then I bring down my 0. So 1,680. So out of the 2,400, 1,680 are left. Okay, that means that 2,400 minus the 1,680 had to be chunked out because they were rotten and destroyed. 13. Okay, so 720 shoes wore out. So going back to our little chart here, we would finish up by putting the 30% is 720 and the 70% is 1,680. We always want to go back to our diagram and fill in the parts to the egg and the cracked egg so that you have your diagram on your homework sheet. Last practice problem. Christopher and Chad collected 40 items. When they added Kathy's items, their total increased by 150%. What was their new total after Kathy's items were added? So now we're going to have a peanut problem. Okay, so let's talk about this a minute before we do our diagram. So they started with 40 items. So this 40 items would be considered their 100%. Okay, so then they're going to add some items that Kathy has. Quite a few items that Kathy has. Because they're going to increase their total by 150%. Which means that the 100% they had to start with plus another 150%. So that means they're increasing to 250% of the original 40 items. And then what is their new total? So don't we just need to know what 250% of 40 is? That's all we need to know. 250% of 40. Okay, that's all we need to know. Now remember, we can do this with decimals. We could say this is 2.50 times 40. Okay, and I think I will, because that's an easy way to work it. 250% is 2.5. 2.50 is 2.5 times 40. Okay, so 2 times 40 is 80, plus a half of 40 is 20. So now, don't they have 100 items instead of just the 40 they started with? That's pretty easy, isn't it? Okay, so let's draw our diagram. So, last diagram for the evening. Over here, I'm going to draw the 40. Over here, in a peanut, remember, this is increased by 140. No, increased by 150%. So if it's increased, if this was the original 100%, and we're increased by 150%, 100 plus 150 is 250%. So we're going to say, what is 250%? So anytime we have over 100%, we're going to use the little peanut here. Okay, so now I'm just going to go ahead and figure out, we already figured out that the 250% was 100. Okay, so they're going to increase up to 100, which means that Kathy added 60 new items to their list. Okay, so now let's check. 100 is 250% of 40. Is it true? Okay, so let's cancel a 0 out there. Let's cancel another 0 there. 25 times 4 is 100. Is 100. Check. And it works. And that is the end of our percent problems. And we are done with lesson 58, but you need to go and do your homework on that. This is Mrs. A, and may God bless your day.